Hey guys, it's Daniel. Just want to come and welcome you guys into one of our first live Zoom mobility sessions. We're going to be doing these fairly often through this sort of stay-at-home time. So keep you guys all going. So this is just going to be a nice little intro to sort of how we're going to try and structure some of our mobility ones. And just give you guys something to sort of kick off each morning that you want to that you're going to be doing, whether you're working at home, still working in your normal environment, or training at home. So yeah, we want to go through and sort of help you guys, still learn a lot of what you would be learning in the gym with us, going through your coaching stuff, and just to give you guys some structure and routine as well to help look after yourselves while you're probably in a bit of a different environment at the moment. So we're going to be going through, our live Zoom timetable. We're going to be going through some mobility sessions, some strength and power sessions, some bodyweight circuits, and for those of you with equipment, we're going to be going through full equipment sessions as well, alongside your normal training program. So what we'll do today is kick off a little bit of basic mobility stuff, and I'm going to put this live recording into the members page. So if you weren't able to jump on this morning for any reason and do it live with me, you can still follow it through as if you were. So we're going to be recording each session and dropping them into the members page as well. So mobility is obviously super important. We start every single session in the gym with some kind of warm-up routine to prepare our body to get it ready for what we're going to do. I try and do as much of this sort of stuff throughout the day, or begin each day as I can, just because I know it's going to help me feel better to start every day. So the biggest thing that most people don't realize is there's a difference between mobility and flexibility. Okay, people use the words interchangeably, but just to start to educate you guys a little bit more as well. So flexibility, think of sort of like stretching a muscle, like all the muscle fibers and the groups of muscles together. So like how much can we lengthen each muscle fiber on its own. Mobility is talking more about our joints and moving a joint through a complete range of motion. So they both do work hand in hand, because you're not really going to be able to move too many muscles without moving the position of the joint as well. So when we talk about mobility, it's not just static stretch and muscle fibers. Okay, we do some of that so that the joint can get into a better position. But it's more about getting our joints, our connective tissues, our tendons, our ligaments and everything all starting to move together as one whole unit to get our whole body in a better position. And that's generally, as athletes, what we do before we get into a session. We don't just come into a session and just stretch the heck out of our legs so that we're really sort of like what we call like hyperflaccid type thing. We want to actually get our body into a better position so that we can challenge it. So think of like a squat. When we start a session, we might be really tight and stiff, just doing a body weight squat. But then our joints and our connective tissues loosen up and we get into a better squat position. So then we can do like a heavier squat or something like that and overload that position and do it safer. Okay, so the difference between flexibility and mobility, there is a little bit of that difference in there. So hopefully you guys can start to understand that as well. So what I like to do is I like to try and actually start most sessions with these big guys. So a lot of people forget that our feet are actually very, very important. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to start with a little bit of a foot warm up, and I'll spin back on the mat so you can see. So what we're actually going to do is I want you to actually start just sort of rubbing the bottom of your foot and sort of massaging it with your thumbs right up the middle of your feet. Okay, and I want you to start to sort of feel if there's any really like tight spots in the bottom of your feet, because along the bottom of our foot is muscle and fascia and connective tissue. Okay, that holds the structure of our foot. And everything we do as an athlete, or for most athletes, is going to be using some sort of stable base of our foot. Okay, if we're running, like even cyclists, any athlete that is producing force in some way, okay, we're going to be relying on our feet to help transfer that force. So what we need to do is we need to make sure our feet are actually ready and up to the task. Okay, so we're going to have a little bit of a massage to help break up some of that tightness in the bottom of our feet. Okay, because we want them to be really nice and pliable, almost like a set of hands. Okay, so what we're going to do, I'm probably going to come out of shot here. So what we're going to do with our feet, okay, is we're going to do a couple of little exercises. I want to see if you can do that. So first of all, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be picking just our big toes up and leaving all other toes on the ground. And then we're going to put our toes down and lift our other 4 toes up, okay? And I want to see, do you have the control and the strength to actually swap over, big toes up, other 4 down, other 4 up, big toes down, and just have a little swap over there and just feel the control, okay, of all of your ligaments and muscles in our feet to be able to actually execute that, okay? Not everyone can actually do it. Then are you able to actually spread your toes? So spread them out as wide as you can and then bring them back in, okay? Spread them out and create as much space between each toe as you can and then bring it back in. And do this probably 3 or 4 times and see how you go with it. Okay, probably looks a little bit creepy there, okay, but having really, really strong feet, okay, are actually going to help nearly every single athlete. And then what we can do is we can come up on our toes and sort of just walk forward back, just on the balls of our feet. Okay, keeping our heels off the ground, so we're activating different muscles in our feet. And then come up on your heels and see if you can walk just on your heels and feel a different set of muscles have to kick in, okay, to go through that. And then spread, lift, lift, walk. You can do that little sequence as a bit of a warm-up. Okay, so what we need to do before we start every training session or every competition is we need to make sure that our feet, the thing that's stabilizing our entire body, are ready to go. They're nice and pliable, like another set of hands, like we've got really good control, but they're also strong in holding that position. Okay, so the feet are ready to go. So what we're going to do is we're going to do just some real easy, nice lengthening static stretching as well as part of our mobility stuff, because like I said, mobility and flexibility work interchangeably. Okay, so just our normal stretches that we normally go through, like I said, we're going to make today pretty easy. Okay. So this is all just a little bit of guidance on, you know, some stretching, some warming up, flexibility and mobility work that you can do. But I tell a lot of my athletes that it's very individualized. So how I feel waking up this morning, where I'm a bit tight and sore from my training yesterday, you're going to feel very different. Okay, so the stretches that you choose to do should be based on where you know your body needs a little bit more attention. Okay, so I'm able to reach out and touch my toes quite easily here, and this is pretty comfortable for me, but for you that might be really, really tight and painful, and you might only be able to get to here, and that's okay. Okay, so our warm-ups are very, very individualized because every single body's different. Okay, everyone's recovery is different from session to session, and where they naturally start to tighten up a little bit more. Okay, so we're just going to go through just a couple. So I'm generally quite tight in this one, whereas a lot of other people can kind of get their knees a lot closer to the ground. That's kind of as far as I go. So, you know, this is one that I do quite often, whereas someone who can touch the ground on both sides with their knees, they might do this and go, no, I don't really need to do this one much anymore. Okay, so these are just some guides that you can follow if you feel tight in the same spot. Okay, if not, that's all right. Find a couple of other stretches that you might be struggling with, and you might feel like I need a little bit more time spent there. Come up and over. So we're just kind of doing the main muscle groups that most people are gonna, you know, find themselves stretching at some point, either in a warm up or a cool down. Over. Try and keep that other foot on the ground if you're doing this one as well. Hug that knee as close into your chest as you can. That's it. It's a good time to start working on your breathing. So while your body's under tension with that stretch, starting to control your breath with it is a really, really good way to start to get your nervous system nice and relaxed and ready to take on whatever it's going to. Very good. Nice extra little shake out. What we're going to do is we're going to start making it a little bit more dynamic. So we're going to come over onto all fours. I'll try and stay as much in camera as I can for you. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go into what I call the J stretch. So I'll face this way so you can see what's going on. So we're going to put one foot across our body. So we're not going to drop into a normal pigeon stretch and hold it. What we're going to do is we're actually going to come up, hands and knee are still on the floor, and we're going to rock back and we're going to drop our hip the opposite way, and we're going to keep our hip moving in and out like a J shape. So I'm going from my starting point, dropping my hips back, and then out to the side, and I'm keeping my knee and hands on the ground, and I'm using the outside of my hip here like a bit of a foam roller, okay? So I'm constantly moving in and out. Remember, this is getting into that mobility of the hip socket now, okay? So what we're doing is we're using that rolling action under tension to actually create a little bit of that dynamic stretch movement. Once you've gone one way, swap it over. So anyone that feels quite tight in the hips from sitting a lot, this one's amazing. Okay, so hands on the ground, knee on the ground, taking my hip back and out the opposite way. Now I'm rolling in that opposite J shape now. And this one you can kind of just have a bit of a play with. Okay, don't drop your hip all the way over to the ground. Okay, you want to keep it up in the air so you can keep moving it in and around. And this one's a really good one if you're about to start squatting or doing anything where you need the pelvis to be able to actually sort of drop in nice and deep. Okay, so on that squatting note, let's come up into just a nice deep squat hold. Now, if this is really uncomfortable for you and you can't sit here comfortably like this, just kind of go to sort of where you can, and you can just keep standing up and shaking the legs out, okay? If you can sit down in here, good. Just have a little bit of a play, rock side to side, take a bit of tension off those same muscles that are under tension in the same spot. And just going side to side. You feel where you just stretch in that J stretch out on the outside in our external rotators, in our hip socket, in that ball and socket. We're actually getting a lot of nice free movement happening there. All right, if you can stay down in the squat, what I want you to do, take your right hand, hold your left shin, then come up. So we've got a bit of a static stretch at the top, a couple of seconds, and then swap left hand to right shin, come up and over, hold, and then we're going to keep swapping over. If you need to stand up in between, that's fine. I just keep swapping over. I never usually really like to count a certain number of reps or anything like that with mobility. Oh, and then go back to side and release a little bit. Because there's no real magic number. Every day you're going to feel different, okay? So every single day, you know, it might take 6 or 7 reps or changing from side to side before you start to feel that stretch kind of finally release. Some days you feel really good and it happens on the first one. So there's no real magic number when it comes to stretching and warming up. Yeah, the golden rule is kind of just do it as much as you need to until you feel your body start to change. So I'm always generally, bring it up a tiny bit for you. I'm always generally a little bit tight on the anterior side of my hips in my hip flexor region. So I like to try and get into a really nice deep hip flexor stretch as many times as I can through the day and help keep releasing that. It's just a part of my body that I naturally seem to tighten up in that anterior side. So I generally have to give it a fair bit of attention to keep it where I need to. So this one's a bit of a deep static hold. And again, it's really good to try and catch the awareness of what your breath's doing in this as well, especially if we've done a few dynamic ones and our heart rate's starting to come up and we're getting some really good blood flow through to our tissues. Okay, it's really good to, if we drop into a nice deep static stretch, to just harness that again and just sort of spin it down. Beautiful. All right, so now let's go in that same stretch position a little bit more dynamically. So there's 2 ways we can do this. So this one's our lunging external rotation, and most of you guys who have been in the facility have probably done this or seen people doing this. So what we're going to do is we're going to go from our lunging position. So the general way of what we do this is we put our opposite hand down. So I've got my left leg out. I'm going to put my right hand down to the ground. Other hand's going to go up to the roof like we did with our squat position. And we're just going to go through a few alternating reps here. And you'll find opening up that thoracic spine, the main stretch component you'll feel is all the way through up through our rib cage, okay, our serratus anterior muscle group, our lat, because our lat muscle attaches to the bottom of our humerus as well. So when we get that nice big stretch to the top, just try and hold it for a second or two, feel that stretch, and come back down. Change over. So opposite hand, if you want to take this stretch a bit further, like you want a bit more of a challenge, just go to the same hand. So right leg, right hand, and you'll get a bit of a deeper stretch right through your hamstring and adductor region, okay? And then you'll find as you come up the top, there's a bit more of a balance component to hold on to. So it's going to be a little bit more of a challenge. 2. Get one more. And 3. Nice. Alrighty. Bring it back down. So when we get into some of our more movement-based dynamic ones around that mobility stuff, you'll find that it actually does increase your heart rate a little bit as well, which is good. So the general purpose of a warm-up is we want to elevate our core temperature, elevate our body temperature, promote more blood flow. Okay, we want to mobilize and start to activate some stabilizer muscles as well. And generally, if we're warming up to go into a training session or some sort of more dynamic movement, so we're about to go train or about to go compete, you then want to start to obviously elevate or potentiate our nervous system and start to get it ready to really start to fire it really, really quickly, get our reaction times and everything like that a lot better. So this one, we're not really sort of going to go into too much of that potentiation type stuff, so we're just going to keep it more passive, just to try and I suppose get you guys feeling really good for what you're about to do today. So what I like to try and sort of finish most of all mobility sections with is just like a long hold, especially sort of if it's at the end of the day or anything like that. So if we're about to go train or about to compete, we probably get up and we do some explosive jumping or some skipping or something like that on that sort of potentiating side. Whereas this, we're sort of just we just basically want to get our bodies feeling really good and start to kind of loosen up. So I like to try and finish most say end of training sessions or something that's not leading into doing something a bit more dynamic with a bit of a long hold of something that I struggle with. Or I find like a position that is quite uncomfortable. So like I said, it's very individualized to where people feel tight. So like I said, I can reach out and touch my toes and it's not really much of a challenge. Other people, it's quite hard. So for me, where I get really tight, like I said, in that anterior side of my hips. So the position that I'm going to hold now is what we call a reverse Nordic curl. So where we're sitting, now you don't have to do this one. For some people, just sitting cross-legged is quite an uncomfortable challenge. So for them, they're really focused on how uncomfortable this is. So even just holding this position for 20 or 30 seconds is a challenge. And if that's you, go for it, sit cross-legged. Just find a position now that is going to, that you find quite a challenge. So for me, it's going to be a reverse Nordic curl. So I'm going to be sitting on my heels, falling back slowly, and just trying to hold this position. So because I get quite tight through that front of my hip, this position for me to hold is challenging. So I'm just going to try and hold this position, and whatever position you choose, I want you to go into it now as well. And I want you to hold this position only as long as you can. As soon as you feel like you need to come out of it, just come back to a seated position. But if you are able to sit in whatever position you've chosen, and just go through some slow breathing, okay? So it might just be 3, 4, 5 breaths, however long, and just go through some breaths. I know it's uncomfortable. Okay, and just go through those slow breaths, control, and you'll find that the position actually starts to feel a little bit better, feel a little bit easier to sit into, because our breath is controlling a lot of our nervous system, and our nervous system is what's holding those connective tissues under tension. Going to come out. I usually try and like to hold that challenging position for a few minutes, but you guys sort of, like I said, take it to wherever you need to and whatever you can. Alrighty, so I feel good. I feel nice and loose. I feel nice and warm. So like I said, we're going to keep doing a lot of these different ones. The other coaches are going to jump on, and we're all going to sort of take turns at doing all the sessions. So yeah, hopefully you guys have learned something today about the difference between flexibility and mobility, done a couple of things to make you feel really good, whether you're about to go train whether you're about to go to work or sit at your desk or whatever it is that you guys are doing safely at home in your own space, you guys are all ready to go and do it to the best of your ability. All right, guys, thanks for jumping on, and hopefully you guys can go and make the most of your day now.